The small town of Pinebrook, nestled in the heart of Vermont, was no stranger to harsh winters. But this year, the cold seemed to seep into the very bones of the town, leaving its residents huddled indoors, seeking warmth and comfort. The streets, usually bustling with life, were eerily quiet, save for the occasional crunch of tires on the snow-packed roads or the distant bark of a dog. It was on one such frigid evening, just as the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and orange, that something extraordinary happened at the Pinebrook Police Department. Officer Ryan Thompson, a seasoned member of the force with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, was just settling in for what he expected to be another quiet night shift. He had his feet propped up on his desk, a steaming cup of coffee in one hand and a half-eaten donut in the other, a cliché he embraced with a self-deprecating chuckle. The station was nearly empty, with most of his colleagues having headed home to their families. Ryan didn't mind the solitude. After 20 years on the force, he found a certain peace in these quiet moments. But tonight, that peace was about to be shattered in the most unexpected way. The door to the station creaked open, letting in a gust of icy wind that made Ryan shiver. He looked up, expecting to see one of the town's residents coming in to report a minor dispute or a lost cat. Instead, his eyes widened in surprise as he saw a dog, a white Labrador retriever, stumble through the door. The dog was a pitiful sight. Her once pristine coat was matted and dirty, caked with mud and ice. She was painfully thin, her ribs visible beneath her fur. But it was her eyes that caught Ryan's attention. They were filled with a mixture of fear, determination, and something else, a silent plea for help that Ryan couldn't ignore. "Well, hello there," Ryan said softly, setting down his coffee and donut. He stood up slowly, not wanting to startle the dog. "Where did you come from, girl?" The Labrador's tail gave a weak wag, but she didn't move from her spot near the door. Her breath came in shallow gasps, and her entire body trembled, whether from cold or exhaustion, Ryan couldn't tell. Probably both, he thought. Ryan approached her cautiously, his hand outstretched. "It's okay," he murmured. "You're safe here." The dog sniffed his hand tentatively, then gave it a small lick. It was as if she understood his words, her eyes never leaving his face. Despite her obvious distress, there was a gentleness about her, a silent communication that tugged at Ryan's heart. As he got closer, Ryan noticed a collar around the dog's neck. Gently, he reached out to examine it. The tag read Luna. "Luna," he said softly. "Is that your name, girl?" At the sound of her name, Luna's tail wagged a bit more enthusiastically. Ryan couldn't help but smile. But his smile faded as he took in her condition more closely. Luna was severely undernourished, and as he ran his hands gently over her body, he could feel the telltale signs that she had recently given birth. "Oh, Luna," Ryan sighed. "What happened to you? Where are your puppies?" Luna whined softly, as if in response to his questions. She took a few steps towards the door, then looked back at Ryan, her eyes imploring. The implications of Luna's condition and behavior weren't lost on Ryan. Something was very wrong, and Luna had come here, to a police station of all places, for help. It was as if she knew this was a place where she could find assistance. Ryan's mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Was Luna a victim of abuse? Had she escaped from somewhere? And where were her puppies? "Okay, Luna," Ryan said, his voice taking on the calm, authoritative tone he used when dealing with distressed individuals. "We're going to figure this out. But first, let's get you checked out." He reached for the phone on his desk, quickly dialing the number for Dr. Sarah Martinez, the local veterinarian. Sarah was known for her compassion and willingness to help at all hours, especially when it came to animals in distress. As the phone rang, Ryan kept his eyes on Luna. She had settled onto the floor, her head resting on her paws, but her eyes remained alert, watching Ryan's every move. "Sarah, it's Ryan Thompson from the police department. I've got a situation here I could use your help with," he said when the vet answered. He quickly explained Luna's condition and mysterious arrival. "Bring her in right away," Sarah said, her voice filled with concern. "I'll meet you at the clinic." Ryan hung up and turned back to Luna. "All right, girl. We're going to get you some help. Think you can make it to my car?" Luna struggled to her feet, her determination evident in every movement. Ryan's heart went out to her. Whatever she had been through, whatever had brought her here, Luna was a fighter. As Ryan helped Luna into his patrol car, his mind was already working on the mystery. In his 20 years on the force, he'd seen a lot of strange things, but a dog walking into the station like this, that was a first. And Ryan had a feeling that Luna's arrival was just the beginning of something much bigger. The drive to the vet clinic was short, but to Ryan, it felt like an eternity. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Luna, who was curled up in the backseat, her eyes never leaving him. There was an intelligence in those eyes that both unnerved and intrigued him. As they pulled up to the clinic, Ryan saw Sarah waiting outside, her breath visible in the cold night air. She rushed to help as Ryan carefully lifted Luna from the car. "Oh, you poor thing," Sarah murmured as she got her first look at Luna. "Let's get you inside and warmed up." The next hour was a flurry of activity as Sarah examined Luna, cleaning her wounds, running tests, and providing fluids and nutrition. Ryan stayed by Luna's side the whole time, offering comforting words and gentle pets. "Well," Sarah said finally, pulling off her gloves with a snap. "She's definitely been through a lot. She's malnourished, dehydrated, and has some minor injuries consistent with exposure to the elements. And you're right, she recently gave birth, I'd say within the last week or two." Ryan nodded, his suspicions confirmed. "Any signs of abuse?" Sarah hesitated. "Nothing definitive, but some of her older injuries are concerning. I'd need to do more tests to be sure." Ryan felt a surge of anger. The thought of someone mistreating this gentle, brave dog made his blood boil. But he pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the present. "What's next for her?" "She needs rest, good nutrition, and lots of TLC," Sarah said. "Normally, I'd suggest we keep her here, but..." Sarah smiled softly. "But I think she's rather attached to you, Officer Thompson. She hasn't taken her eyes off you since you arrived." Ryan looked at Luna, who was indeed watching him intently from the examination table. He felt a connection with her, a sense of responsibility he couldn't quite explain. "I'll take her," he said, surprising himself with the swiftness of his decision. "At least until we figure out where she came from and what happened to her puppies." Sarah nodded approvingly. "I think that's a great idea. I'll give you some supplies and instructions for her care." As Ryan prepared to leave with Luna, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger story. Luna had come to the police station for a reason, and Ryan was determined to uncover the truth. He helped Luna into his car once again, this time with a soft blanket and some food and water for the ride home. As he pulled out of the parking lot, Ryan glanced at Luna in the rearview mirror. "Don't worry, girl," he said softly. "We're going to figure this out. Whatever you're running from, whoever hurt you, we'll find them. And we'll find your puppies too. I promise." Luna's tail thumped softly against the seat, as if in acknowledgement of his words. And as they drove through the quiet streets of Pinebrook, Ryan couldn't help but feel that his life had just taken an unexpected turn. Little did he know just how right he was, or how deep this mystery would go. The night settled over Pinebrook like a thick blanket, the streetlights casting a warm glow on the snow-covered sidewalks. But for Officer Ryan Thompson and his new charge, Luna, the night was far from over. It was, in fact, just the beginning of an adventure that would change not only their lives but the entire town of Pinebrook forever. The next morning dawned cold and crisp in Pinebrook, the sun struggling to break through a thick layer of clouds that promised more snow. Officer Ryan Thompson awoke to the sound of his phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. He reached for it groggily, his other hand absently scratching behind Luna's ears. The white Labrador had spent the night curled up next to his bed, her watchful eyes never straying far from her newfound protector. "Thompson," Ryan mumbled into the phone, stifling a yawn. "Ryan, it's Davis," came the voice of his partner, Officer Jenny Davis. "We've got a situation. An abandoned truck's been reported near Lincoln Forest. It's been there for a few days according to the caller." Ryan sat up, instantly alert. "Any signs of foul play?" "Nothing confirmed yet, but something doesn't feel right about this one." The caller mentioned seeing some disturbing items around the vehicle. "I'll be there in 20, Ryan said, already swinging his legs out of bed. "Send me the location." As he got dressed, Ryan's mind raced with possibilities. An abandoned vehicle wasn't uncommon in these parts, especially during the harsh winter months. But combined with Luna's mysterious appearance last night, he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was unfolding. He looked at Luna, who was watching him intently. "Sorry, girl. Duty calls. But I'll be back soon, I promise." Luna whined softly as if she understood, her tail thumping gently against the floor. Ryan filled her water bowl and left out some food before heading out, his heart heavy at leaving her alone. The drive to Lincoln Forest was tense, the road slick with black ice that kept Ryan's attention divided between the path ahead and his swirling thoughts. The forest loomed ahead, a dark mass of pine and oak that seemed to swallow the light. As he neared the coordinates Davis had sent, he spotted her patrol car parked on the shoulder of the road. Jenny Davis was a relatively new addition to the Pinebrook Police Department, having transferred from Boston 2 years ago in search of a quieter life. Her short, spiky hair was dusted with snow, and her breath came out in visible puffs as she paced near her vehicle. "Glad you're here," she said as Ryan pulled up. "This whole thing is giving me the creeps." Ryan nodded, his eyes already scanning the area. About 50 yards from where they stood, partially obscured by the trees, he could make out the shape of a truck. It was an old model, its once red paint now a rusty brown that blended ominously with the winter landscape. "Have you approached it yet?" Ryan asked, reaching for the flashlight in his belt. Jenny shook her head. "Waited for backup. But I did a perimeter check. There are some strange things scattered around." Together, they made their way towards the truck, their boots crunching in the fresh snow. As they got closer, Ryan's sense of unease grew. The truck's windows were frosted over, obscuring the interior, but the driver's side door was slightly ajar. "Watch your step," Jenny warned, pointing to the ground. Ryan's flashlight beam revealed what she meant. Scattered around the truck were various items, a torn piece of fabric that might have once been a shirt, a single shoe caked in mud, and most disturbing of all, what looked like a dog collar, its metal tag glinting in the light. "What the hell happened here?" Ryan muttered, more to himself than to Jenny. They approached the truck cautiously, years of training kicking in as they scanned for any signs of immediate danger. Ryan reached the driver's side first, using his gloved hand to pull the door open fully. The interior of the truck was a mess. The seats were torn, stuffing poking out from long gashes that Ryan immediately recognized as claw marks. But it was the dark stains on the upholstery that made his stomach turn. Even in the dim light, there was no mistaking the rusty brown color of dried blood. "Jenny," Ryan called out, his voice tight. "We're going to need forensics out here. This is definitely a crime scene." Jenny was circling the truck, her flashlight beam dancing over the ground. "Ryan, you need to see this," she called. Ryan made his way around to the truck bed, where Jenny was standing. Her flashlight illuminated the back of the truck, and Ryan felt his blood run cold. The truck bed was lined with cages, dog cages. Most were empty, but a few contained tufts of fur and more of those dark, ominous stains. "Jesus," Ryan breathed. What kind of operation were they running here? As they continued their investigation, the pieces started to fall into place, forming a picture that was as clear as it was horrifying. The scattered syringes they found near a makeshift campsite, the multiple dog collars, the bloodstains, it all pointed to one thing: an illegal dogfighting ring. Ryan's mind immediately went to Luna, the gentle Labrador waiting for him back home. Had she escaped from here? Was this where her puppies were? The thought made his jaw clench in anger. "We need to expand the search," Ryan said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Whatever happened here, I don't think it ended at this truck. Jenny, call it in. We're going to need all hands on deck for this one." As Jenny radioed for backup, Ryan began a methodical search of the surrounding area. The forest was dense, the underbrush thick even in winter, making progress slow and difficult. But Ryan was driven by a sense of urgency he couldn't quite explain. It was as he pushed through a particularly dense thicket that he heard it, a faint sound that made him freeze in his tracks. He held his breath, straining his ears. There it was again, a whimper, so soft he might have imagined it. "Jenny," he called out. "Over here. I think I've found something. He moved forward carefully, following the sound. The whimpering grew louder, more distinct. As he pushed aside a fallen branch, his flashlight beam fell on a sight that made his heart lurch. Huddled against the base of a large oak tree was a dog, a pit bull by the looks of it. The poor creature was emaciated, its ribs clearly visible beneath its short coat. It looked up at Ryan with eyes full of fear and pain, too weak to even attempt to run away. "Hey there," Ryan said softly, crouching down to appear less threatening. "It's okay. I'm here to help." The dog whimpered again, trying to press itself further against the tree. As Ryan got closer, he could see the wounds on the dog's body, some fresh, some old and poorly healed. This dog had been through hell, and recently. Jenny arrived, her sharp intake of breath telling Ryan she'd seen the dog too. "There might be more," she said. "I'll keep searching." Ryan nodded, his focus on the frightened animal before him. Slowly, carefully, he inched closer, speaking in low, soothing tones. "You're safe now," he murmured. "No one's going to hurt you anymore." It took time, precious minutes that stretched into what felt like hours, but eventually, the dog allowed Ryan to approach. Up close, the extent of its injuries was even more apparent, and Ryan felt a surge of anger towards whoever had done this. As gently as he could, Ryan scooped up the dog. It was terrifyingly light in his arms, a testament to how long it had been without proper care. "I've got you," he whispered. "You're going to be okay." The next few hours were a blur of activity. More officers arrived, along with animal control and a team from the local animal shelter. The search expanded, and more dogs were found, some alive, some not. Each discovery was like a punch to the gut for Ryan, but he pushed through, driven by a determination to see this through. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, Ryan found himself back at his patrol car, the rescued pit bull sleeping fitfully in the backseat, wrapped in emergency blankets. Jenny approached, her face grim. "We've got a total of 8 dogs rescued, alive," she reported. 3 didn't make it. Forensics is still processing the scene, but they've found enough evidence to suggest this was a large-scale operation. Dogfighting, illegal breeding, the works. Ryan nodded, his jaw set. "Any leads on who's behind this?" Jenny shook her head. "Nothing concrete yet. But we did find this." She held up an evidence bag containing a torn piece of paper. On it was scrawled an address in Pinebrook. Ryan's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just some out-of-town operation. This was happening right in their backyard. "We'll find them," he said, his voice hard with determination. "Whoever did this, we'll bring them to justice." As he prepared to head back to the station, Ryan couldn't help but think of Luna. He was more convinced than ever that she was connected to all this. But how? And where did her puppies fit into this grim picture? The drive back to Pinebrook was silent, Ryan's mind racing with theories and plans. This case had just blown wide open, and he had a feeling it was going to get worse before it got better. But as he glanced in the rearview mirror at the sleeping pit bull, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about solving a crime anymore. This was about justice, for Luna, for the dogs they'd rescued today, and for all the others who had suffered at the hands of these criminals. And Ryan was determined to see it through, no matter where the investigation led. As the lights of Pinebrook came into view, Ryan made a silent promise, to Luna, to the rescued dogs, and to himself. He would uncover the truth, and he would make sure that those responsible paid for their cruelty. The real work was just beginning, and Officer Ryan Thompson was ready for the challenge. The following day dawned grey and cold in Pinebrook, a light snow falling steadily from the overcast sky. Officer Ryan Thompson hadn't slept much, his mind too full of the horrors he'd witnessed in Lincoln Forest. He'd spent most of the night at the station, poring over the evidence they'd collected, trying to make sense of the tangled web they'd uncovered. As he nursed his 3rd cup of coffee, staring at the incident board they'd set up, his partner Jenny Davis burst into the room, her cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. "Ryan, we've got a lead," she said breathlessly. "A hiker reported hearing cries for help near the area where we found the truck. Search and rescue is mobilizing, but given what we know, the chief wants us there too." Ryan was on his feet in an instant, grabbing his coat. "Let's go," he said, his fatigue forgotten in the rush of adrenaline. The drive back to Lincoln Forest was tense, both officers lost in their own thoughts. As they neared the search area, Ryan couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. It had been less than 24 hours since they'd made the grim discovery of the abandoned truck and the abused dogs. What new horrors would today bring? They parked at the makeshift command post that had been set up at the forest's edge. The area was a hive of activity, search and rescue teams gearing up, dogs barking excitedly as they prepared to join the search. Captain Miller, a grizzled veteran of the Pinebrook Police Department, approached as Ryan and Jenny climbed out of their car. "Thompson, Davis," he greeted them gruffly. "Glad you're here. Given your familiarity with the case, I want you two to join Alpha Team. They're heading to the area where the cries were heard." Ryan nodded, his jaw set with determination. "Any more details on what we're walking into, sir?" Miller shook his head. "Nothing concrete. The hiker wasn't able to pinpoint an exact location, just a general area. Could be related to your case, could be an injured hiker. Either way, time is of the essence." With a quick briefing from the search and rescue coordinator, Ryan and Jenny set out with Alpha Team. The forest was eerily quiet, the falling snow muffling their footsteps. Every so often, they'd stop to call out, listening intently for any response. They'd been searching for nearly 2 hours, the cold seeping into their bones despite their warm gear, when Ryan heard it. A faint cry, almost lost in the whisper of wind through the trees. "Hold up," he called to the team. "I heard something. This way." They moved forward cautiously, Ryan in the lead. The cry came again, louder this time. Definitely human, definitely in distress. "Hello," Ryan called out. "This is the police. We're here to help. Can you hear me? Help." The response was weak, but clear. "Please, help me." Ryan quickened his pace, following the voice. As they rounded a large oak tree, they saw her. A woman lay crumpled at the base of the tree, her clothes torn and dirty, her body curled in on itself as if to conserve warmth. As they approached, she lifted her head, revealing a face bruised and scratched, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. "It's okay," Ryan said softly, crouching down beside her. "We're here to help. I'm Officer Thompson. Can you tell me your name?" The woman licked her cracked lips, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, my name is Sarah." As the search and rescue medic moved in to assess Sarah's condition, Ryan took in the scene. Sarah's injuries were extensive: cuts, bruises, and what looked like rope burns on her wrists. This was no hiking accident. "Sarah," Ryan said gently, "can you tell us what happened? How did you end up out here?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "The dogs," she said, her voice breaking. "I was trying to save the dogs." Ryan and Jenny exchanged a look. This was it, the connection they'd been looking for. As the medic worked to stabilize Sarah for transport, she began to talk, her words tumbling out in a rush as if she'd been holding them in for too long. "I worked for them," she said, wincing as the medic cleaned a particularly nasty cut on her arm. "Not by choice, not at first. They threatened my family. Said they'd hurt my little brother if I didn't do what they said." "Who are they, Sarah?" Jenny asked, her notebook out. Sarah shook her head, fear flashing in her eyes. "I can't, they'll kill me if they find out I talked." "You're safe now," Ryan assured her. "We won't let anyone hurt you. But we need to know what's going on so we can stop them." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "It's a dogfighting ring," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's bigger than that. They're breeding dogs too, selling the puppies to finance their operation." Ryan thought of Luna, of her recent litter. "The puppies," he said. "What happens to them?" Sarah's face crumpled. "The ones that look strong, they keep for fighting. The others." She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Ryan could fill in the horrific blanks. "I couldn't take it anymore," Sarah continued. 2 nights ago, I managed to free some of the dogs. There was this one, a white lab. She had just had puppies. I helped her escape with them, but we got separated in the woods. I've been trying to find them, but then the men, they caught up with me." Ryan's heart raced. Luna. It had to be Luna. What happened then, Sarah? He prompted gently. Sarah's eyes clouded with fear at the memory. They were furious. They beat me, said they were going to make an example of me. But I managed to get away. I've been running ever since, trying to find help. As Sarah finished her story, the medic announced that she was ready for transport. Ryan stood, his mind reeling from everything he'd learned. Sarah, he said, I promise you, we're going to put a stop to this. But we need your help. Will you be willing to give us a full statement once you've received medical attention? Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll tell you everything I know. Just, please find those puppies. And Luna. That was the lab's name. Luna. Ryan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Luna, he repeated. Don't worry, Sarah. We know where Luna is. She's safe. As they watched the rescue helicopter take off with Sarah on board, Ryan turned to Jenny. We need to move fast, he said. Now that we know what we're dealing with, we can't waste any time. Jenny nodded, her face grim. I'll call the station, get them to start compiling everything we have. We need to identify these guys. As they made their way back to their patrol car, Ryan's mind was racing. They had a victim willing to testify. They had evidence. And they had Luna, living proof of the cruelty they were fighting against. But they also had a ruthless, organized criminal operation that wouldn't go down without a fight. And somewhere out there, lost in the vast expanse of Lincoln Forest, were Luna's puppies, innocent victims in a cruel game. Ryan climbed into the driver's seat, his jaw set with determination. This case had just become personal. Not just because of Luna, not just because of the horrors they'd uncovered, but because of Sarah, a young woman who had found the courage to stand up against cruelty, no matter the cost. As they drove back to Pinebrook, the snow falling harder now, Ryan made a silent vow. He would see this through to the end. For Luna, for Sarah, for all the dogs who had suffered at the hands of these criminals. Justice would be served, no matter what it took. The real battle was just beginning, and Officer Ryan Thompson was ready for the fight of his life. The drive back to Pinebrook was a blur for Officer Ryan Thompson, his mind racing with the new information Sarah had provided. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was more horrifying than he had imagined. As he pulled into his driveway, exhaustion weighed heavily on his shoulders, but he knew his day was far from over. Luna greeted him at the door, her tail wagging tentatively. Despite everything he'd learned, Ryan couldn't help but smile at her. Hey girl, he said softly, kneeling down to scratch behind her ears. We've got a lot to talk about, don't we? As if understanding the gravity of his words, Luna whined softly, pressing her head against his hand. Ryan sighed, standing up and moving to the kitchen. He needed coffee, lots of it, if he was going to make sense of everything that had happened in the past 48 hours. While the coffee brewed, Ryan watched Luna. She seemed restless, pacing back and forth between the kitchen and the front door. Every so often, she'd look up at him with those soulful eyes, as if trying to communicate something important. I know, girl, Ryan said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Your puppies are still out there. But we're going to find them, I promise. As he sipped his coffee, Ryan's mind wandered back to Sarah's words. Luna had escaped with her puppies, but they'd gotten separated in the woods. The thought of those tiny, helpless creatures out there in the cold made his heart ache. Suddenly, Luna's behavior since her arrival made perfect sense. She hadn't just been seeking help for herself, she was trying to lead them to her puppies. Ryan set down his coffee cup, a new determination filling him. All right, Luna, he said, grabbing his coat. Let's go find your babies. Luna's ears perked up at his words, and she bounded to the door, tail wagging furiously. Ryan couldn't help but chuckle at her enthusiasm, despite the seriousness of the situation. The sun was setting as they drove back towards Lincoln Forest, casting long shadows across the snow-covered landscape. Ryan had called it in, letting the station know what he was doing, but he decided against waiting for backup. Something told him that time was of the essence. As they neared the forest, Ryan pulled over to the side of the road. He turned to Luna in the passenger seat. Okay, girl, he said softly. This is your show now. Lead the way. They set off into the forest, Luna taking point. Ryan had to admit, he felt a bit foolish following a dog into the woods, but he trusted Luna. She moved with purpose, her nose to the ground, occasionally stopping to sniff the air before changing direction. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sounds the crunch of snow under their feet and Luna's occasional snuffles as she searched. As they ventured deeper into the woods, Ryan began to worry. What if they were too late? What if the puppies hadn't survived the harsh winter conditions? Just as doubt began to creep in, Luna froze. Her ears perked up, and she let out a soft whine. Before Ryan could react, she was off, bounding through the underbrush. "Luna, wait!" Ryan called, struggling to keep up. He pushed through the dense foliage, branches whipping at his face. Suddenly, he burst into a small clearing and stopped short. There, at the base of a large, hollow tree, was Luna. And surrounding her, squirming and yipping weakly, were 5 tiny puppies. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The puppies were alive, but they looked weak and cold. Without hesitation, he shrugged off his coat, wrapping it around the tiny bodies. "Good girl, Luna," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You did it. You found them." Luna wagged her tail, gently nuzzling each puppy as if counting them. Ryan quickly assessed their condition. They were cold and hungry, but miraculously, they seemed to have survived their ordeal relatively unscathed. As he gathered the puppies, preparing to take them back to safety, Ryan couldn't help but marvel at Luna's determination and intelligence. She had managed to hide her puppies, keep them alive in harsh conditions, and then seek out help. It was nothing short of remarkable. The journey back to the car was slow and careful, with Ryan cradling the precious bundle of puppies and Luna hovering anxiously nearby. As they emerged from the tree line, Ryan saw flashing lights. Backup had arrived. Officer Jenny Davis rushed over, her eyes widening as she saw the puppies. "You found them," she breathed. "How?" Ryan nodded towards Luna. "She led me right to them. We need to get them to a vet, fast." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. The puppies were rushed to Dr. Sarah Martinez's clinic, where they were examined, warmed up, and fed. Luna refused to leave their side, her protective instincts in full force. As Ryan watched the reunion through the clinic's observation window, he felt a mix of emotions. Joy at the successful rescue, anger at the criminals who had caused this situation, and a deep, abiding respect for Luna's courage and loyalty. Dr. Martinez approached, a tired smile on her face. "They're going to be okay," she said. "It's a miracle they survived out there, but they're fighters. Just like their mom." Ryan nodded, his eyes still on Luna and her puppies. "What happens to them now?" he asked. Sarah's smile softened. "Well, they'll need to stay here for a few days for observation. After that, they'll need homes." Ryan's heart clenched at the thought of separating Luna from her puppies after everything they'd been through. But he knew it was for the best. These puppies deserved loving homes, far away from the cruelty they'd narrowly escaped. As if sensing his thoughts, Luna looked up from her puppies, meeting Ryan's eyes through the glass. In that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. Luna had trusted Ryan with her most precious secret, and now she was entrusting him with her puppy's future. Ryan placed his hand on the glass, a silent promise to Luna. He would make sure her puppies found good homes, and he would put an end to the organization that had caused them so much pain. As he left the clinic that night, Ryan's mind was already racing with next steps. They had rescued Luna and her puppies, but the job was far from over. The criminal organization was still out there, and they needed to be stopped. But for now, as he drove home under a sky full of stars, Ryan allowed himself a moment of peace. They had won a small victory today, a beacon of hope in what had seemed like an endless sea of cruelty. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, Luna's secret was safe. And that was enough. The following weeks in Pinebrook were a flurry of activity. With Sarah's testimony and the evidence collected from the abandoned truck, the police had enough to start building a solid case against the dogfighting ring. Officer Ryan Thompson threw himself into the investigation with a fervor that surprised even his closest colleagues. Every free moment was spent following leads, interviewing potential witnesses, and piecing together the intricate web of the criminal operation. Luna and her puppies remained at Dr. Martinez's clinic, growing stronger each day. Ryan visited whenever he could, drawing strength from their resilience. The sight of Luna nursing her pups, now plump and playful, reminded him of why this fight was so important. It was on a crisp Friday morning, nearly a month after Luna's arrival at the police station, that the breakthrough came. Officer Jenny Davis burst into the station, her eyes bright with excitement. "Ryan, we've got them," she exclaimed, slamming a file down on his desk. "Anonymous tip just came in. We've got an address for their main operation." Ryan's heart raced as he scanned the file. The address was for an old warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place that had been abandoned for years. It was the perfect cover for an illegal operation. "Have you verified this?" Ryan asked, already reaching for his jacket. Jenny nodded. "As much as we can without tipping them off. Utility usage has spiked in the last 6 months, and there have been reports of strange noises and vehicles coming and going at odd hours." Ryan nodded, his jaw set with determination. "All right, let's move. We need to plan this carefully. We can't risk them slipping away." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. A task force was assembled, including officers from neighboring counties and even a few federal agents who had been tracking similar operations across the state. Ryan insisted on leading the raid himself, a decision that Captain Miller reluctantly agreed to after seeing the fire in the young officer's eyes. As dusk fell, the task force gathered at a staging area near the warehouse. The air was thick with tension as final preparations were made. Bulletproof vests were secured, weapons checked, and last-minute instructions given. Ryan stood before the assembled team, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Remember, our primary objective is to rescue any animals on the premises and apprehend the suspects. But be careful, these people are dangerous and won't hesitate to fight back. Watch each other's backs in there." As the team moved into position, Ryan felt a familiar presence at his side. He looked down to see Luna, her tail wagging slightly, her eyes fixed on the warehouse ahead. "Luna, what are you doing here?" Ryan whispered, kneeling down beside her. He had specifically left her at the clinic, not wanting to put her in harm's way. Luna whined softly, pressing her head against his hand. In that moment, Ryan understood. Luna had started this journey with him, and she wanted to see it through to the end. "All right, girl," Ryan said, scratching behind her ears. "But you stay close to me, okay?" With a final nod to Jenny, who was leading the second team, Ryan gave the signal. The raid began. The next few minutes were chaos. The sound of splintering wood filled the air as the task force breached the warehouse doors. Shouts of "Police! Freeze!" mingled with surprised yells and the frantic barking of dogs. Ryan moved swiftly through the warehouse, Luna at his heels. The scene that greeted them was worse than he had imagined. Cages lined the walls, filled with dogs in various states of neglect and injury. In the center of the warehouse was a crude fighting ring, its floor stained dark with what Ryan knew was blood. As they pushed deeper into the warehouse, a shot rang out. Ryan ducked instinctively, pulling Luna down with him. He could hear his fellow officers returning fire, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. "Thompson, we've got runners heading for the back exit." Jenny's voice crackled over the radio. "On it," Ryan responded, sprinting towards the rear of the warehouse. As he rounded a corner, he came face to face with a burly man wielding a crowbar. Time seemed to slow. Ryan saw the man's eyes widen in surprise, then narrow with malicious intent. The crowbar arced through the air, aimed squarely at Ryan's head. But before it could connect, a white blur shot past Ryan. Luna launched herself at the attacker, her teeth sinking into his arm. The man howled in pain, the crowbar clattering to the ground. Ryan wasted no time in subduing him, quickly cuffing the now whimpering criminal. "Good girl, Luna," Ryan panted, his heart racing. "Good girl." But their ordeal wasn't over. As Ryan secured the suspect, he heard a commotion from outside. He raced out the back door, Luna hot on his heels, to see Jenny struggling with another man, the leader of the operation, Ryan realized with a jolt. The man had broken free from Jenny's grasp and was sprinting towards a waiting car. Without hesitation, Ryan gave chase. He could hear Luna's paws pounding the pavement beside him, matching him stride for stride. Just as the suspect reached for the car door, Luna overtook Ryan. She leapt, colliding with the man and sending them both tumbling to the ground. Ryan was on them in an instant, securing the cursing criminal as Luna stood guard, her hackles raised and a low growl rumbling in her chest. "It's over," Ryan said, hauling the man to his feet. "You're under arrest." As the dust settled and the last of the suspects were loaded into police vans, Ryan surveyed the scene. Animal control vehicles were arriving to take care of the rescued dogs. EMTs were tending to a few officers who had sustained minor injuries in the raid. And Luna. Luna was sitting calmly at his feet, as if she hadn't just helped bring down a major criminal operation. Ryan knelt beside her, wrapping his arms around her neck in a tight hug. "You did it, girl," he murmured. "We did it." As the first light of dawn began to streak the sky, Ryan led Luna back to his patrol car. The fight was over, but he knew their work was far from done. There were dogs to rehabilitate, criminals to prosecute, and a community to heal. But looking at Luna, her head held high and her tail wagging proudly, Ryan felt a surge of hope. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them the same way, side by side. The drive back to Pinebrook was quiet, both Ryan and Luna exhausted from the night's events. But as they passed the "Welcome to Pinebrook" sign, Ryan couldn't help but smile. Their little town had been changed forever, but for the better. And it had all started with one brave dog who dared to ask for help. As they pulled into the driveway of Ryan's house, the first rays of sunlight were painting the sky in brilliant hues of pink and gold. It was a new day in Pinebrook, full of promise and hope. And for Ryan and Luna, it was just the beginning of their next great adventure. In the weeks following the raid, Pinebrook buzzed with a newfound energy. The takedown of the dogfighting ring had shaken the small town to its core, but from that upheaval sprouted seeds of change and compassion. Officer Ryan Thompson found himself at the center of it all, a reluctant hero in the eyes of the community. The local animal shelter, once a quiet, often overlooked establishment, now bustled with activity. Volunteers poured in, eager to help with the rehabilitation of the rescued dogs. Dr. Sarah Martinez worked tirelessly, her clinic becoming a beacon of hope for the abused animals. The sight of wagging tails and healing wounds served as a daily reminder of the battle they had won. Luna, however, remained the true star of Pinebrook. Her story, now known throughout the town, had touched hearts and opened eyes to the realities of animal cruelty. Children would point and whisper excitedly whenever Ryan walked her down Main Street. "Look, it's Luna," they'd say, their faces lighting up with admiration. One sunny Saturday morning, about a month after the raid, Ryan sat on his front porch, sipping coffee and watching Luna play with her puppies in the yard. The pups had grown strong and healthy, their playful antics a far cry from the weak, shivering bundles he had found in the woods. As he watched them tumble and yap, a bittersweet feeling washed over him. The puppies were almost ready for adoption, and while he knew it was for the best, the thought of separating them from Luna tugged at his heart. "Penny for your thoughts," a voice called out. Ryan looked up to see Jenny Davis walking up his driveway, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He smiled, gesturing for her to join him. "Just thinking about how much has changed," he said, accepting the offered cup gratefully. Jenny nodded, her eyes on the frolicking puppies. "It's amazing, isn't it? A month ago, we were chasing shadows. Now look at us." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching Luna patiently endure her puppy's enthusiastic attacks on her tail. Finally, Jenny spoke again, her voice soft. "You know, the whole town's talking about setting up a task force dedicated to preventing animal cruelty, educating people. They want you to lead it." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Me? I'm just a beat cop, Jenny." She snorted, nudging his shoulder. "A beat cop who brought down a multi-state dogfighting ring. Face it, Thompson, you're a hero." Ryan shook his head, but he couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. "It wasn't just me. It was all of us. Especially Luna." As if hearing her name, Luna looked up, her tail wagging. She trotted over to the porch, her puppies scrambling after her. Ryan reached down to scratch behind her ears, marveling at the journey they had been through together. "So," Jenny said, a mischievous glint in her eye, "when are you going to make it official and adopt her?" Ryan blinked in surprise. The thought had crossed his mind, of course, but he'd been so focused on the investigation and then the aftermath that he hadn't given it serious consideration. Looking at Luna now, her brown eyes gazing up at him with trust and affection, he realized there was only one answer. "You know what? I think it's about time I did," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Ryan filed the adoption papers for Luna, making their partnership official. The puppies, now robust and full of energy, were put up for adoption. The response from the community was overwhelming. Families lined up outside the shelter, each hoping for a chance to provide a loving home to one of Luna's pups. Ryan made sure to carefully vet each potential adopter, determined to ensure that the puppies would never again know cruelty or neglect. It was a bittersweet process, watching each puppy go to their new home. Luna seemed to understand, giving each of her babies a final nuzzle before they left, as if giving them her blessing. As the last puppy was adopted, Ryan knelt beside Luna, wrapping an arm around her. "You did good, girl," he murmured. "They're going to have amazing lives because of you." Luna leaned into him, her warmth a comfort against the cool autumn air. Together, they watched as the last family drove away, a new chapter beginning for both the puppy and its adoptive family. The following weekend, Pine Brook held a community event in the town square. Banners fluttered in the breeze, proclaiming Pine Brook against animal cruelty and Luna's legacy. Stalls were set up offering information on responsible pet ownership, animal welfare, and volunteer opportunities at the local shelter. Children laughed as they played with therapy dogs, their parents watching with smiles that spoke of a community healing and growing stronger. Ryan stood on a small stage, Luna sitting proudly beside him, as he addressed the gathered crowd. "A few months ago, a brave dog walked into our police station and changed everything," he began, his voice carrying across the square. "Luna showed us the worst of humanity, but she also brought out the best in our community. Today, we're not just celebrating Luna. We're celebrating every animal that has found a loving home, every volunteer who has given their time, and every person who has opened their eyes to the importance of compassion and kindness towards all living beings." As he spoke, Ryan saw faces in the crowd light up with determination. He saw Sarah, the young woman who had risked everything to save the dogs, now volunteering at the animal shelter. He saw Dr. Martinez, tired but proud, standing with her team of veterinary volunteers. And he saw countless Pine Brook residents, their eyes shining with a new understanding and commitment. "Luna's story doesn't end here," Ryan continued. "It's just the beginning. Today, we're launching the Pine Brook Animal Welfare Task Force. Together, we'll work to ensure that no animal in our community suffers from cruelty or neglect. We'll educate, we'll advocate, and we'll act. Because every animal deserves a chance at a happy life, just like Luna and her puppies got." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Luna, seemingly understanding the importance of the moment, let out a joyful bark. As the sound echoed across the square, Ryan felt a swell of emotion. This was more than just a happy ending to a harrowing story. It was a new beginning, a commitment to compassion that would ripple out far beyond the borders of their small town. As the event wound down and the sun began to set, Ryan and Luna took a quiet walk through Pine Brook Park. The autumn leaves crunched under their feet, a crisp breeze carrying the promise of the changing seasons. Ryan reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From that cold night when Luna had stumbled into the police station, to the dramatic raid on the warehouse, to this moment of community celebration, it had been a whirlwind of challenges, heartbreak, and ultimately, triumph. They paused by the small lake, its surface reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. Luna sat beside Ryan, her head resting against his leg. As he looked down at her, Ryan felt a profound sense of gratitude. This remarkable dog had not only brought a criminal organization to justice but had also awakened a spirit of compassion and activism in Pine Brook that would undoubtedly save countless animal lives in the future. "You know, Luna," Ryan said softly, "when you walked into the station that night, I never imagined we'd end up here. You've changed so many lives. Mine most of all." Luna looked up at him, her brown eyes full of understanding and love. In that moment, Ryan knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them together. Luna had started as a victim, become a hero, and was now a symbol of hope and resilience for an entire community. As they turned to head home, the first stars beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky, Ryan felt a sense of peace settle over him. Luna's legacy of love had only just begun, and its ripples would continue to spread, touching lives both human and animal for years to come. In rescuing Luna, Ryan and the people of Pinebrook had found a part of themselves they didn't know was missing: a capacity for compassion and a drive to protect the voiceless. The story of Luna and Officer Ryan Thompson would be told in Pinebrook for generations to come. It would inspire children to treat animals with kindness, motivate adults to volunteer their time and resources, and remind everyone of the profound bond that can exist between humans and animals. But more than that, it would stand as a testament to the power of one individual, be they human or canine, to spark change and bring out the best in those around them. As Ryan and Luna walked home through the quiet streets of Pinebrook, their silhouettes merging in the gathering dusk, they were more than just a man and his dog. They were partners, friends, and a living embodiment of the change they had brought to their community. And in Pinebrook, as porch lights winked on and families settled in for the evening, there was a newfound sense of purpose, a commitment to kindness that would define the town for years to come. Luna's journey from a desperate, injured dog to a beloved community hero was complete. But in many ways, the real journey, for Luna, for Ryan, and for Pinebrook, was just beginning. It was a journey towards a more compassionate world, one rescued animal and one opened heart at a time. And as the stars shone brightly over Pinebrook that night, the future had never looked more full of hope and promise.